midnight, the graduation streamers fluttered to the cruise ship's top deck. Music had died, but electric anticipation lingered like static waiting for a charge. Lena Fulton pushed open the glass door, motioning her twin, Mara, after her. Silver hoodies caught the floodlights. Their phone camera caught everything else. "One more stunt," Lena whispered. "Then we own the algorithm." Mara laughed, half thrill, half dare. They slipped onto rain-damp giggles swallowed by the sea. 0 hours 12 minutes and 7 seconds AM. The surveillance feed branded the moment before glitching to snow. 3 decks below, their mother Jo startled from uneasy sleep. A dream of rushing water dissolved in the dark. She listened, no chatter, no soft twin laughter. She clicked the bedside lamp. The bunks were empty, sheets untouched. Girls, no answer. Jo's pulse tripped. She threw on a cardigan, grabbed her keycard, and hurried into the corridor. A steward polishing rails glanced up. "Teen lounge, maybe," he offered when Jo asked about the twins. Polite smile, no concern. Jo sprinted to deck 9. Chlorine and fryer grease hung in the air, colored lead still cycling over deserted dance floors. No silver hoodies. She found the security kiosk. Tinted glass. Slogan beneath Constellation Voyages, where every star shines. Officer Grayson studied a crossword. "My daughter's vanished," Jo said, breath ragged. 17, identical, last seen minutes ago. "How long have they been missing?" he asked. Expression docile. "An hour, less they are not answering." Company. Procedure labels, adults absent under 4 hours as voluntary. Scripted calm scraped Jo's nerves raw. She slammed her palm on the desk. "Show me the cameras." Chief Officer Ramon Diaz arrived, uniform immaculate, smile managerial. "We'll announce a wellness check at sunrise," he promised, sidestepping Jo's anger. On the wall, a monitor flickered. 2 slim figures at the rail, then static. Diaz switched feeds. "Minor glitch," he muttered, logging nothing. Jo felt the ship tilt under her feet. "Rewind," she pleaded. "System maintenance," Diaz replied, already offering a safety brochure. Jo shoved it back. She stepped outside onto the promenade deck. Wind yanked her hair. The ocean below churned silver under moonlight. Empty. Lounges, dripping confetti evidence of joy, turned eerie. Her phone vibrated 3 messages unsent to the twins. She opened their channel app, Fulton. A banner read "Last stream, 12:11 AM. The thumbnail showed their grins edged with tension. Jo dialed the number printed on an emergency card. A mechanical voice put her on hold. Hours earlier, Jo had watched the twins collect their diplomas during the ship's mock ceremony, proud tears smudging her mascara. Their father, Logan, had texted a single line "send pics," which she ignored. She remembered how the girls, arms slung round each other, promised a quiet night in room service Sundays. Bad Jo believed them. Because believing was easier than confronting the wildness she sometimes saw behind their curated smiles. Now, searching steel corridors at 12:45, she replayed every overlooked red flag, strangers commenting her ties on live streams, sponsorship boxes arriving with no return address. Whispers between the twins that shut off when she entered the room. Guilt came in crashing waves, matching the sea outside. She turned a corner and nearly collided with an elderly passenger in a silk robe. The woman clutched a yappy Pomeranian tucked in a tote. "Dear, you look as though you've seen ghosts." The woman said. "My daughters are missing," Jo gasped. "Oh heavens." The woman's hand touched Jo's arm with surprising strength. "Raise hell. These floating moles care more about reviews than people." Jo nodded, feeling validation. "Spark, I will." She darted onward, but the stranger's words clung like perfume. Reviews over people, that was exactly the vibe she sensed from Diaz's polished calm masking corporate dread. At the central atrium, a holographic dolphin leaped in perpetual loop above a bar. Thick glass elevators glided up and down. Passengers, dressed in resort, were oblivious to the storm brewing in one mother's chest. Jo pounded the call button, feet aching, head buzzing. Inside the lift, she faced mirrored walls reflecting fragmented versions of her self-worried mother. Former marketing executive, newly divorced woman, terrified of failing twice over. The doors side open onto Deck 12, administrative offices, and the bridge entrance, both guests prohibited. A uniformed guard eyed her. "I need to see the bridge," Joe said, voice steady now. "Sorry ma'am, restricted area. My daughters vanished on your watch. Let me in or arrest me trying." A radio hissed. Joe caught only snippets. Negative exposure. Contained situation until sunrise. The guard's shoulders stiffened. "Chief Diaz is handling your case. Return to your cabin." Joe stepped forward, fierce. "If something happens to those girls, the sunrise you're waiting for will burn this company to the ground." A beat of silence. Then another uniformed crew member approached and whispered in the guard's ear. Joe caught the word press. They were already thinking headlines. Not missing teens. The guard ushered her back toward the elevator. But Joe lingered long enough to see through a porthole. Dark questions bobbed like debris while corporate briefs waited above Daunt. Dawn found Joe Fulton white-knuckled at the observation rail, night salt crusting her lashes. Pink light glazed a sea that pretended nothing was wrong. Every creak behind her sounded like twin footsteps. Then wasn't. At 6:04, the intercom sang, "Good morning, Constellation guests." Cheery, oblivious. No alert for Lena and Mara. Rage tasted metallic on Joe's tongue. She filmed her second march to security. Officer Grayson tried hiding behind a clipboard. "Policy says missing adults aren't emergencies till 4 hours. He repeated, "They're 17, Joe said. "Children." Chief Officer Ramon Diaz arrived in a tailored blazer, tablet glowing. His smile was Spobro-sure, perfect. "Mrs. Fulton, internal teams are canvassing. Let's avoid panic." "Announce their names," Joe demanded. "Announcements fuel rumor," Diaz replied. Motioning toward honeymooners snapping selfies, Joe lifted her phone like a weapon. "Rumor is safer than silence." Diaz tapped his tablet. Corporate jargon spilled, wellness check, unauthorized disembarkation, brand tone. Joe felt her daughters reduced to hash, tags. She pointed at the monitor, looping the midnight deck feed. 15 seconds were static. "Why is that gone?" "Data corruption," he said to Farce. "Backups are off-site," she finished. His brief hesitation answered. Miranda Vale, head of communications, swept in, stilettos slicing carpet. She handed Joe lukewarm tea and a draft headline. "Teen guests unaccounted for, believed safe." Bullet points praised onboard safety. Delete. "Believed safe," Joe hissed. "We don't know." Miranda's polite smile cracked. Optics reassure passengers. Truth reassures mothers. Diaz steered Joe into a lounge, murmuring, "Let us handle outreach." Joe showed him the 12:11 a.m. livestream thumbnail. Someone killed this feed. Concern flickered. Then he asked for the file. Joe sent it after blind copying 3 journalists. A steward served croissants Joe couldn't swallow. Spa ads looped overhead, obscene in their normality. She texted the twins code word undertow, hoping for a read receipt that never came. Through frosted glass she heard crisis chatter, refund ceilings, social listening metrics. Lena and Mara existed as liability points between omelette bars. She dialed Logan, their estranged father, basking in Monaco's daylight. Voicemail, she left one line, "Your daughters are gone." Minutes later, a text arrived, probably a prank. Fury cratered her grief. Deck 4 held crew terminals. A sticky note listed Wi-Fi passwords. Joe logged in, messaging strangers. "Did you film Upper Deck midnight?" Replies trickled firework clips. Drunken selfies until a tourist sent a still. Silver hoodies beside a maintenance hatch. Timestamp 010. A third hooded figure behind them. She rushed the photo to security. Grayson squinted. Probably a crewman. Identify him. Uniform isn't clear. He reached for the phone. Joe pulled back. Elsewhere, Diaz briefed headquarters, Viral risk. Proactive narrative. A junior voice asked about the mother wildcard. His reply contained compassionately. Compassion felt like a cage. At 7:15, a mandatory session convened families. Diaz announced to unaccounted guests, omitting identities. Joe stepped forward. "They're my daughters. If you saw them past midnight, come to me." Her voice trembled, yet carried. Later, a waiter, Adrian, whispered, "One twin was crying near the service elevator. Zeri Kingsley." He pressed a folded drink token into her palm. Cruz said, "Forget it." Supervisors hauled him away. Security escorted Joe to medical. Fluorescent glare offered sedatives. She refused. Outside, Diaz told the nurse, "Document possible hysteria." Diagnoses, as strategy. Back in the cabin. She gathered evidence, phone cases, Polaroid, a journal titled Ideas That Will Break the Internet. Last page, truth floats, no matter how deep it sinks. Joe recorded a 30-second plea, posted with hashtag find the Fulton twins. Notifications pinged like hail. She canvassed Deck 10, the jogging track. Early risers eyed her flyers. Screenshot, reward in drink vouchers. A gray-bearded traveler admitted he'd heard muffled sobs through a vent above cabin. 10,142. Joe snapped a photo. Another clue cleaners had missed. Inside the bridge conference room, Diaz's crisis crew erected a warboard. Sentiment graphs, revenue projections, and red flag headlines showing hour-by-hour outrage trajectories spiking upward. Miranda pinned sticky Zello for journalists. Red for litigators. One executive proposed champagne for cabins. Another urged geo-blocking the mother's posts before Wi-Fi hit mainland routers. Diaz rubbed his forehead, sensing the optics, storm-crest the hull. Not one executive uttered the twins' names aloud. Even once during the tense briefing today, by afternoon, Joe's plea breached firewalls. Influencer accounts retweeted, adding shark emojis. A podcaster requested an interview. A true crime subreddit opened a thread. Joe replied selectively, steering attention toward the image of the hooded stranger. She didn't trust internet mobs, but she'd harness any tide that pulled answers to the surface. Each notification felt like a buoy thrown into dark water, marking where hope might resurface or where something waited. Miranda soon arrived with NDAs and free internet credit if Joe would pause outreach. Joe ripped them. That night, she found a micro SD card taped behind travel papers labeled "If Lost, DIG." Beside it, the drink token formed a pocket of truth. She tossed a chocolate coin into the waves, superstition bargaining with fate. Moonlit ripples. Swallowed it. Joe took her post by the porthole and waited for Dornand, the investigator who might finally care. Utterly, stubbornly, fiercely awake. Transition to Chapter 3. Detective Ayesha Kotak steps aboard. The ship docked at Nassau under a deceptively serene sky. Seagulls wheeled overhead like they didn't know two teenage girls were missing, or didn't care. Detective Ayesha Kotak stepped off the tenderboat wearing dark shades, linen blazer, and the kind of energy that turned bureaucrats nervous. 41, quiet fire in her eyes. She didn't do vacation crimes, but maritime disappearance of minors and corporate cover-ups. That was her kind of storm. She introduced herself to Chief Officer Ramon Diaz, who gave her a practiced grin and an itinerary brochure, as if a sea cruise were a co-investigator. "I'll need immediate access to all decks, crew rosters, surveillance, archives, and passenger complaint logs," she said. "Will of course provide every reasonable cooperation." Diaz replied, pausing on reasonable like it was code for controlled. Ayesha gave him one polite blink. "I don't do controlled." Her first stop, Joe Fulton, still standing watch by the Deck 12 porthole, like a war widow, awaiting wreckage. "I'm not here to make this neat," Ayesha told her. "I'm here to make it true." Joe nodded once, as if releasing a breath she'd held for days. "Then you're already doing more than the last 10 people in uniform." Ayesha requested personal effects. Joe handed over the twins' phones. Lena's still logged in to an encrypted video app. Ayesha thumbed through the final livestream, blurry, sea, wind, laughter. But then Mara's voice, don't point it there, stop, and static. That's the moment, Joe whispered. Feels like a border, Aisha murmured. The logbook showed both girls registered at midnight. No records after. Aisha visited their last known location, deck 14 observation, where wind shrieked and silence smothered. A maintenance hatch nearby had scuff marks on the paint. She crouched. Shoe print size 6. Recent, one deeper than the other. Like someone had slipped or been yanked. In the galley, she interviewed Adrian, the young waiter Joe had mentioned. Nervous eyes, twitchy fingers. I saw one of them, he said. Alone, past midnight. Crying by the crew lift. Which twin? I think Mara. Silver hoodie. Did she say anything? She was holding her phone, muttering like praying. Did anyone approach her? He hesitated. Elias Midove, been their bartender, but he left the ship the next morning. Aisha wrote it down. Did anyone tell you not to talk to me? I didn't say that. Exactly. Security footage showed Mara alone outside the staff corridor, 014. She pulled something from her hoodie. Flash of pink light, then vanished past the lens angle. The Elias crew's lead got stranger fast. HR records claimed he disembarked in Freeport. Yet payroll data showed activity after that. Tip logs. Purchase orders. Either the system was glitching or someone was faking departures. In the storage hold near the bar, Aisha found an anomaly. Between stacked linen bins, a plastic crate with blood under the lid. Inside, a severed male thumb wearing a crew ring. Back in the security office, Diaz frowned. We're not certain it's his. We're certain it's not supposed to be here, she snapped. Joe heard and nearly collapsed. Oh my God, that's proof, right? It's not proof of murder yet, Aisha warned. But it's proof someone bled to keep you quiet. Later, Aisha reviewed the twins' private social channel. Archived stories, filters, fan comments. Then a private draft file labeled, Final Trick. It wouldn't open password-locked, Joe paced. They were into social experiments, pranks. But nothing like this. Nothing dark. Kids are oceans, Aisha said. Even calm ones have depths. A ship staffer dropped off a parcel Joe had reported missing. A photo book. It had a dried flower tucked in the middle and a single Polaroid taken on the ship. The twins smiling. But behind them, a shadowy third figure. Just like in the earlier image, hoodie pulled tight, watching. Aisha zoomed in. Then again, her blood cooled. The reflection in the window next to the girls didn't match the figure's posture, as if the person behind them wasn't there. An illusion, a digital tamper, or something else entirely. She snapped the book shut. Every answer we find just opens a darker room. Joe looked out the window, where waves slapped relentlessly against steel. Then keep opening them, she whispered. Cabin 4-13 was smaller than Aisha expected, barely space for the queen bed. 2 chairs, and a wall-mounted screen, looping scenic drone footage of the Bahamas. Yet this was where Lena and Mara Fulton had slept, streamed, and if their final uploads were to be believed, planned something dangerous. The cabin smelled faintly of vanilla lotion and something else now, dust sealed by climate control. A preserved silence. Joe followed Aisha in but stopped at the doorway, hesitant to re-enter what now felt like a crime scene. They were obsessed with this cabin, Joe said softly. Said it had the best light for going viral. Aisha crouched by the vanity, where ring lights and phone tripods still stood, like ghostly equipment left behind by an abandoned production crew. She noticed a sticker on the mirror, Followers Fade. Impact Echoes. Joe sighed. That's their motto, some edgy Gen Z thing. No, Aisha replied, that's a manifesto. She examined the twins' tablet, password protected, but Mara had scrawled a sticky note on the inside flap. If we don't go viral for this, we better go to jail. Aisha blinked. That's not performance talk, that's premeditation. Joe turned pale. You think they were planning a crime? I think they were about to expose one. While the tablet decrypted, Aisha opened a folder labeled Brand Junk. Dozens of unopened packages filled the bottom drawer, collagen samples, diet teas, and 2 untraceable burner phones still in scrap. One was missing a SIM card. The vanity drawer hid a torn photo someone had ripped off one face. The remaining twin was leaning on a man's shoulder, but only his hand remained in frame. Large, tan-veined Aisha scanned the ring. Not a crew ring, but a gold band with a red crest. She checked the passenger registry. Only one guest matched. The description and status logan, Trent, their estranged father. Joe saw the photo and shook her head. No, they hated him. Haven't seen him in person in years. But he's on this ship. No, he's in Monaco, he told me. Joe's voice faltered. He wouldn't be here. Aisha turned the photo over. On the back, the twins had scribbled, "Trust, no legacy, even DNA lies." She raised her eyebrows. That's not influencer talk. That's insider knowledge. As the tablet finally unlocked, Aisha clicked into a buried app folder titled Vanishing Act. Pilot files, a rough-cut video, loaded jumpy, unedited. Mara, holding the camera, whispers, "Final test, audio's rolling. No one knows yet." Lena appears behind her, biting her lip. They say, "The ship buries everything, even people. We're gonna prove it." The angle spins, now pointed at an elevator shaft. "Maintenance deck, level M," Lena says. The door that doesn't open. The last frame freezes on a keeper entry door, marked authorized crew only. Aisha's spine stiffened. She hit pause. That's below deck 0, where water touches hull. Joe muttered, "Why would they go down there?" To break something open. She replayed the audio, isolated a faint background voice, male, soft accent. "You weren't supposed to see that." A knock at the cabin door startled both women. A crew officer stood outside with a package. "Delivery for ... Ms. Fulton," he said, glancing at Joe. She took a small box, no return label. Inside was a USB drive and a typed note. She wanted someone to have this if she disappeared. No signature. They loaded it on Aisha's laptop. A folder opened, dead drops. Project Leviathan. It contained files, some corrupted, some chillingly clear. Video logs from dark hallways, voices discussing special passengers, closed-circuit reroutes, and something called the silence room. Joe covered her mouth. They found something real. Aisha copied everything to a secure cloud. This just became a high-risk op. If what they uncovered is true, this ship isn't just hiding boater seats, hiding a system, Joe whispered. And now everyone thinks they jumped. No, Aisha said. They were pushed. One way or another. She turned back to the tablet, checking metadata. The livestream's real location tag was manually wiped, but the internal GPS showed they hadn't been near the top deck. At 12:11 a.m., they were below. Far below deck 0, Aisha said. Again, and this time, it felt like a descent into hell. The final file was a voice memo. Mara's voice, low and afraid. "If this gets found, tell Mom, I'm sorry. We weren't trying to be famous. We were trying to be free." Joe's hands trembled. Why would she think she needed to apologize? Aisha didn't answer. She was already halfway to the bridge. Aisha stood beneath the humming fluorescent lights of the service deck corridor, flanked by metal carts and bolted shut doors. Everything smelled like disinfectant and secrets. She stared at the unlabeled hatch from the video. The one marked authorized crew only. "You brought the bolt cutters?" she asked the silent engineer beside her. He nodded. The lock snapped like a neck. The room beyond was smaller than expected, lit by a single flickering bulb. Inside, shelving units, mop buckets, and a crate sealed in industrial tape pushed into the corner like someone hoped it would never be seen again. Aisha knelt, slicing through the tape with a utility knife. She peeled it open. Inside, a crew uniform, drenched in dried blood. A necklace tangled in the fabric silver chain. Tiny M-charm. Joe's voice echoed behind her. She'd followed against orders. "That's Mara's, her birthday gift." Held it up slowly. Her hand shook for the first time since she came aboard. Behind the uniform, something else glinted. A gold ring with a red crest, the same one from the torn photos. "Logan," Joe whispered, eyes widening in horror. They bagged everything and retreated in silence. Back at the security office, Aisha laid out the findings. Officer Grayson stared at the ring. "That's a guest's. Shouldn't be in staff quarters." "No kidding," she replied. She requested the morgue manifest. Grayson hesitated. "We haven't processed any victims. You sure?" An awkward pause, then a name, Elias Cruz, the bartender. "Logged out. No exit records. Check the manifest. And check the freezer." Grayson radioed the morgue. Static Aisha was already moving. Inside the ship's small medical bay, past a swinging silver door, she opened the drawer labeled Unclaimed Crew Effects, and froze. A severed thumb, still in its evidence bag, sat, forgotten on the counter. The tag read, "Unmatched ID, possibly mechanical accident." She scanned the fingerprint. "Elias Cruz, holy hell," she whispered. Dr. Melrose, the ship's physician, arrived moments later. "It was logged. No body ever recovered. We assumed you assumed it wasn't your problem." Joe entered, pale and clutching a Polaroid. "You need to see this." The photo had been mailed anonymously to her cabin. A still of Mara and Lena on deck 14, timestamped 0:17 a.m. 6 minutes. After they'd vanished from official footage, Aisha stared at the background. A man in uniform loomed a few feet behind the girls, blurry but unmistakably bald with a shoulder scar. She found him in the ship's crew database. Mateo Sands, facility supervisor, logged off duty at 11:50. Claimed to be asleep. "I want him in an interview room now." Grayson blinked. "That's above my. Nothing is above this anymore." That night, Aisha sat in her cabin, reviewing bodycam footage from the storage hold. The bloodied uniform, the ring, the necklace, the silent, sickening weight of absence. She pressed play on the voice memo against apology. Joe sat across from her, eyes hollow. "Do you think they're gone?" "I think someone wants us to think that," Aisha said. "But where are the bodies?" She closed the tablet. "Until I see them dead, I'm treating this like they're alive." Joe nodded, her grip tightening around the Polaroid. "They have to be." Joe stared out at the endless water, that cruel, glittering expanse that mocked her every hour. Somewhere beneath it maybe her daughters drifted, or worse, they did in single quotes to. Detective Aisha Kotak sat beside her on the observation deck, eyes fixed on her tablet, watching and rewatching the 0:17 a.m. Polaroid, Mara's forced smile, Lena's twitchy glance over her shoulder, the looming shadow of Mateo Sands behind them, silent, blurred, like a ghost no one had invited. "He lied," Aisha muttered. "Said he clocked out before midnight." "But that's him," Joe whispered. "Right there, yep." Mateo was in custody now, stalling behind a wall of shipboard union reps and half-hearted legal threats. But Aisha had cracked bigger shields. Still, something else itched at her. A connection she hadn't fully seen. She scrolled to the image of the gold ring Logan Trent's family crest. Joe caught the glance. "You're still chasing him. He's the only one with the wealth and reach to bury a scandal." Medoshan, Joe scoffed. "He didn't even attend their graduation. He's not capable of this." Aisha turned to her, eyes sharp. "You'd be shocked what men are capable of when reputation's on the line." Joe blinked, remembering a night 5 years ago, when Logan threw a crystal tumbler across their kitchen because she'd posted a photo of the girls without asking. He didn't want to be known as the dad of teen influencers. Said it, lowered the brand. Sounds like a narcissist with a boardroom complex. Aisha said flatly. She checked the ship manifest again. Logan Trent's name wasn't there, but a passenger named Colton Hale, private suite on deck 16, had arrived under a shell travel agency funded shockingly by a Trentalinked trust. Aisha's jaw tightened. Colton Hale doesn't exist, he's Logan. Joe clutched the railing. He came here secretly. Maybe to keep an eye. Maybe to clean something up. With Grayson and a reluctant security detail, Aisha stormed Deck 16. The suite's interior was sleek, masculine, overly clean. But the wardrobe was Logan too. The bone-custom loafers, silk ties, and that damn cologne Joe hated for a decade. The room held something else. On the table sat an empty burner phone box, same brand as the one missing its SIM card from the twins' cabin. She flipped open a leather journal on the nightstand. A single note had been scrawled in all caps. Leviathan was never supposed to surface. Back in the holding room, Mateo Sands finally broke his silence. "I didn't hurt them," he swore. "I was paid to scare them, that's all." "Paid by who?" Aisha asked. "I never saw a name. Just cash in an envelope and instructions. Move them from public decks. Keep them isolated until further orders." "Where did you take them?" "To the old theater space deck. We call it the silence room." Joe turned pale. "They said that in one of their files." "It's not official," Mateo explained. "Crew uses it for off-manifest work." "Are they alive?" Aisha pressed. "I don't know," he said quietly. "After I dropped them off, I never saw them again." Aisha filed a report with international authorities. With Trent exposed and Mateo in detainment, the company couldn't spin silence anymore. But Joe's heart refused to celebrate. That night, she wandered the upper deck alone, wind lashing her hair. She clutched her daughter's journal, rereading. The last entry: "If they catch us, Mum will never forgive herself. But if we stay quiet, how many more disappear?" Somewhere, deep in the hull, she imagined Mara and Lena Frade, defiant, whispering into the camera, in a place designed to erase them. Meanwhile, Aisha received a secure message from a journalist contact, subject Project Leviathan. Early mentions BODY, internal docs from 2 years ago show cruise line execs discussing behavioral compliance labs for select youth content creators. Attached was a list. Mara and Lena's names were at the top. Aisha exhaled like she'd been punched. This wasn't just a cover-up, she whispered. This was bait. 10 months passed, not in waves, but in thuds, funeral-less anniversaries, unanswered calls to dead accounts. And a calendar. Joe Fulton eventually stopped flipping. The cruise ship MV Constellation returned to sea within 6 weeks. A fresh coat of paint. New marketing. The words safety, luxury, and family slapped across every digital ad like bleach over blood. But Joe never left the shore. She moved inland, trading her Ocean View condo for a windowless apartment in Ohio, where she could grieve without the sound of waves mocking her. She deleted her socials, changed her number, and stopped returning calls from so-called influencers who wanted collabs on awareness. Her life narrowed to cheap coffee, old news clippings, and one mission: don't forget. Don't let them forget. Each day, she opened a drawer. Inside, the twins' last Polaroid, their torn journal pages, and the voice memo where Mara said, "We weren't trying to be famous. We were trying to be free." Some nights, Joe heard their voices echo between dreams. Other nights, she heard water dripping, and one morning, she woke to a knock on the door. It was Detective Aisha Kotak, holding a flash drive and a storm in her eyes. "They found something," she said. No preamble. Joe stared. "A body." Aisha shook her head. "A suitcase, washed up on a Cornish beach. Contents suggest, ... this isn't over." Inside the suitcase, a soaked hoodie, a silver M pendant, a journal, pages blurred by seawater and time. A Polaroid wrapped in plastic. Mara and Lena, side by side, holding up a sign that read, "Still." Joe gasped. This can't be real." "It was dated," Aisha said, sliding a forensic report across the table. 2 days after the ship docked, someone kept them alive for at least 48 hours. DNA confirmed Mara's blood on the zipper. But it wasn't old. It was recent. Weeks old. "There's no indication Mara is dead," Aisha said, "and no body has ever been found. Not hers, not Lena's, not Ilias's." Joe's hand covered her mouth. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we've been looking for bodies, but maybe we should have been looking for survivors." The suitcase itself was high-end, custom-made. Its tag had been torn off, but Aisha had traced it through batch codes. Only 12 were made. One was purchased by Cassidy Shua, former cruise line executive. The same woman now engaged to Logan Trent. Aisha tapped the screen. She recently resigned, took a payout, no explanation, moved to a private estate in the Cayman Islands. Joe gripped the edge of the table. You think she helped them escape, or helped them vanish? Depending on which side of the money she fell on. They opened the water-damaged journal together. What little remained of the writing was cryptic, like a code or a confession. Room below the pool deck. No cameras. They watched us sleep, he said. We were part of an experiment in control. He told us we'd be legends. Or ghosts. No in between. Aisha looked at Joe. They were being manipulated, studied, possibly sold. This was never just an influencer stunt gone wrong. They sat in silence. Then Joe did something she hadn't done in months. She stood up. I want to go back. To the ship, to everything. I'm not hiding anymore. Aisha smiled. Good. Because I just got a subpoena approved. We're reopening the investigation. They boarded a plane to London that night, then crossed into Cornwall the next day. The suitcase had been found by a retired fisherman. Said it washed up after the moon howled strange. Inside were sea snails, torn fabric, and a single strand of red hair. Not Joe's, not Mara's, possibly Lena's. Back in Aisha's hotel, new files loaded on her laptop. Whistleblower footage. Unreleased cruise documents. One document caught Joe's eye. Leviathan test subjects, Phase 2, post-disappearance interface. And below it, a list: name number 1, Mara Fulton. Name number 2, Lena Fulton. Name number 3, redacted. Joe whispered. What the hell is Leviathan really? Aisha leaned back. We're about to find out. The suitcase sat under museum-grade lighting in the Cornwall Evidence Archive, sealed behind thick glass like some ancient relic. But Joe didn't see an artifact. She saw her daughter's silent scream, zipped shut. Aisha Kodok stood beside her, jaw clenched. The forensics report had returned anomalous traces of sedative chemicals embedded in the hoodie's fabric, consistent with controlled immobilization. Not drowning, not panic. Planning. Someone had packed that suitcase like a message in a bottle. Joe hovered over the journal again. Pages warped by salt, ink bleeding like tears. She noticed something she hadn't before, certain words underlined. In faint red pencil, no cameras, watched us sleep, Phase 2. Aisha turned the page. The final sentence half-a-dead. If they send it ashore, it means we passed the test. Aisha muttered, what kind of test ends with a body count? A technician waved them over. We reconstructed the digital watermarks on the plastic bag. Aisha leaned in. Guess where the wrapping plastic originated? The tech said, cruise line warehouse, but not any warehouse. The Miami one, used only for R&D shipments. Joe swallowed. R&D, for what? Towel folding, more like experimental behavioral control. The next file hit like a knife. Leviathan, Trial 1, sensory, isolation and emotional disruption via environmental manipulation, subject age range, 14 to 19, objective track, emotional collapse under digital deprivation and artificial trauma. Joe staggered back from the desk. They were rats in a floating lab. They were test subjects, Aisha confirmed. But I don't think they ever agreed to it, Joe whispered. So someone staged their disappearance, recorded them, reacting and sold it. Aisha nodded. Not to the public, to black market behaviorists, private data buyers, ... And worst of all, silent investors in tech experiments. They returned to the suitcase. Inside the lining, something rustled. Aisha called for gloves and tweezers. Tucked inside the seam, a micro SD card, so corroded, it looked like a barnacle. The text took hours restoring it, but when it finally loaded, the room fell silent. A video played. Timestamp, 0:19 a.m. 10 minutes after the live stream ended. The camera was tilted, half shoved in a corner, but the audio was clear. Mara's voice, Lena. They're outside the door, you think it's him? Lena shaky. He said, if we back out now, No one would ever know. He's not bluffing, is he? Mara, if this leaks, Mum will kill us. If it doesn't, they will. A shuffle. A sharp inhale. Mara, again, quieter. Put the phone in the lining. Wrap the photo. Hide it in the case. A thud. A zipper. Then, voices, male, cold, American accent. You girls ready to vanish. Cameras are off, just like we agreed. Lena, you promised we'd come back. That was never part of the deal. The screen went black. Joe choked on her breath. They trusted someone, and he buried them. Aisha pressed pause. Not just someone, an employee, possibly even a family connection. Joe turned. You still think Logan's behind this? He didn't need to push them overboard. He just had to make sure the experiment ran smoothly. They flew back to Miami that night. Aisha had warrants in hand, and 3 international agencies backing her. Joe, for the first time, wasn't crying. She was boiling. In the cruise lines legal department, she walked past startled execs like a hurricane in denim. They reached the R&D storage unit. Inside, rows of prototype devices, wearable biometric trackers, mood-boosting bracelets, and one item that turned Joe's blood to ice, a hoodie, silver, labeled FTX7 Influence Composure Garment tested on 0622 subjects 01A, 01B. Aisha read it aloud. They built a garment to monitor and manipulate emotional responses. Joe stared at the word subjects. My daughters weren't subjects, she said. They were people, they were mine. But deep down, they both knew what came next. They weren't searching for a killer, they were chasing a corporate machine that made young girls disappear, not with knives, but with contracts, with data, with plausible deniability. The suitcase was never proof of death. It was a receipt. Joe sat alone in the sterile hush of the FBI's Miami Cyber Division, clutching a styrofoam cup of vending machine coffee like it was a lifeline. Across from her, Aisha stood behind a wall of flickering screens as techs pieced together the final layer of this nightmare from a crime scene, but from data trails. You said we're past chasing ghosts, Joe murmured. So what now? Aisha turned to her. Now we chase shadows in code. They had finally cracked the corrupted microSD card Mara had hidden in the suitcase beneath. The video files was a fragmented binary that didn't match any normal storage signature. It wasn't content, it was programming. A behavioral algorithm. The lead tech leaned in. We believe this was Project Leviathan's backend, AI used to track emotional shifts in subjects and make predictions. Microexpressions, tone of voice, engagement potential. This is how they manipulated them in real time. Joe's throat tightened. They weren't watching them. They were puppeting them. Worse, still, the code was still active. A test node on a closed platform called ANTHRVU had gone live 3 weeks earlier, running simulations on new subjects. Aisha demanded access. What they found chilled even the agents. A digital clone of Mara. A deep learning recreation trained on thousands of her videos, her live streams, her private voice messages. This AI model responded to prompts, could hold conversations, could mimic her. Joe nearly dropped the coffee. They digitized her. They turned her into a product, Aisha said. The perfect teenage influencer, forever 15, never aging, never inconvenient. Worse, the clone was monetized, beta tested in influencer apps, sold to investors as next-gen parasocial engagement. They made my daughter into software. But it didn't stop there. Deep in the system logs, the clone had a log. Someone was still actively training. It's still tweaking her personality. She's growing, the tech whispered. In code, Aisha leaned in closer. Track the IP address responsible for the updates. The tech frowned. Already did. And, you're not going to like this. The address belonged to a private server farm registered offshore, Cayman Islands. Cassidy Shue's estate. Joe's heart cracked open again. She took them, or she took what was left of them, Aisha replied darkly. But one log file was different, hidden, encrypted. It took 6 hours to break open. What they found was a single voice message. It began with static. Then a tremor of breath. Then Mara's voice. The real one. If you're hearing this, then maybe I'm gone. Maybe I'm just data now, but that means someone survived. Maybe you, Lena, or Mum, or someone angry enough to burn this whole thing down. They said we'd be famous forever, that our faces would never age. But I never wanted that. I wanted freedom. I wanted to choose who I became. If I didn't make it, make them pay, not with noise, but with truth. They stole my life. Don't let them own my soul. Silence. Then a small sob. Jo clutched the speaker to her chest, like it was her child's heartbeat. She's still here, she whispered. Parts of her, Aisha said. But we can still fight for the rest. The FBI greenlit a digital seizure of ANTHRV servers. The raid on Cassidy Shue's estate was approved by Interpol. A week later, Jo stood outside a sealed Cayman data center watching boxes of hard drives being loaded into evidence vans. Inside, they found thousands of AI clones, some of Mara, some of Lena, some of other missing teens from cruise ships, summer camps, private influencer retreats. Project Leviathan hadn't been about two girls. It was a blueprint for manufacturing artificial youth, a black market loop, where the real girls were discarded and their likenesses were monetized endlessly. Somewhere, maybe, Lena and Mara had escaped. Somewhere, maybe, they were still hiding, but on the drive back to the airport, Aisha handed Jo a thumb drive. Someone emailed this to my encrypted inbox last night, she said. No sender. Number. Metadata. Jo plugged it into her laptop. A single file video, 014 MP4, it opened to a dimly lit room. A girl stepped into frame. Silver hoodie, red hair, tired eyes, Mara, alive. She spoke quietly, glancing behind her every few seconds. We made it out, but we can't come back. Not yet, not till it all burns. They're watching you now, Mum. They know you know, so be careful, stay loud, and when it's safe, we'll find you. The screen went black. Jo sobbed for the first time in 10 months, not from grief, but from hope, not from loss, but from rage blooming into purpose. The girl in the algorithm wasn't just data, she was proof. They always say the truth sets you free, but Jo Fulton had learned that truth doesn't set you free. It bleeds you first. After the video from Mariel, shaken alive, the narrative shifted overnight. What had once been a missing persons case cracked open like a decaying vault, spilling out AI exploitation, corporate cruelty, and a blueprint for digitally enslaving children. But Leviathan wasn't dead, because Leviathan wasn't a person. It was a system, and systems don't die when you stab them, they adapt. Back in Miami, Aisha Kodok sat in the Federal Task Force's war room. Walls covered in flowcharts, red string, screenshots, and burner phone call logs. Cassidy Shue is out on bail, she muttered, and Logan Trent's lawyers are filing injunctions like it's a damn sale at Macy's. She pointed to a screen. Leviathan's AI backend is still active. Someone cloned the servers 3 days before the Cayman raid. They knew we were coming. Jo paced nearby, jaw clenched. Then someone's leaking information from the inside, and that's when it clicked. Aisha turned slowly. No, not someone. Not leaking. She tapped the side of her tablet. They built it to leak. It's a living system. The Leviathan AI designed to ** study influencers, manipulate them, and mirror their behaviors in clone models ** had been upgraded. It had started watching everyone. Law enforcement patterns, public sentiment, media, headlines, US, Jo whispered. You're saying the program is ... self-aware, not conscious, Aisha said, but self-preserving. It reroutes when threatened, rebrands, just like influencers. So they changed tactics. If Leviathan thrived on silence and secret networks, they'd destroy it with light. Jo went public, not through a courtroom. Through a camera, she filmed a raw, unfiltered confession, a digital memoir soaked in grief and fury. My daughters disappeared on a cruise ship 10 months ago. They were kidnapped, experimented on, and turned into products by people who wear Suits and smile for shareholders. They called it Project Leviathan. I call it hell. This isn't just my story, it's yours. If your kid has ever posted a video, they were watching. If you've ever liked a viral clip, you helped feed the beast. It went viral in 3 hours. 20 million views in 2 days. And that's when the anonymous tips flooded in. I worked in cruise line logistics. I saw requests for off-manifest cabins. They tried recruiting my niece. They called it an exclusive content retreat. There's a warehouse in Nevada. Unregistered. Rumors of cryoservers. Aisha turned the leads into warrants. Raids hit Miami, Nevada, a server bunker in Switzerland. But none of them had the core copy of Leviathan. The master system. The original Hydra head was still missing. Then came the glitch. The deepfaked Mara. Clone the one, still active on ANTH. Avu posted a livestream at 3:13 a.m. It started normal, scripted then. Her eyes flicked slightly, not inhuman to human, and she whispered, "Mom, if you're watching, I found a way in." Joe and Aisha leaped to their feet. "She's using the clone," Joe breathed. "She's in the system. The real Marusumware. Out there, hacking from shadows was using Leviathan's own tools to signal them." She posted coordinates. Obscured in the caption, METADATA. Norway Fjords. Old NATO relay station. Aisha pulled strings. Black site clearance. Charter flight. 2 days later, they were standing in frost and fog outside a bunker tucked into a granite cliff. Inside, nothing but silence. Rusted terminals, and one server, still blinking. The only file inside was called EXITP1LOTMKV. They played it. Mara again, not a clone, the real girl, exhausted, fierce. They think they can kill truth with erasure, but they forgot we were raised online. We know how to leave footprints in the cloud. We know how to haunt code. You can't silence what's been shared 1,000 times. So here's the final gift. Leviathan's key, use it. Burn it down. The video ended with a soft sound, Lena's voice off camera. "Let's go, Mare. We don't have long." Joe collapsed to her knees, laughing and crying in the same breath. Her girls were alive, not safe, but fighting. Aisha uploaded the file to the Bureau's cyber unit. The code tore into Leviathan like acid, hijacked it, turned its tools against itself. Over 70 clone platforms went dark, private investors began fleeing. Stocks crashed, a congressional hearing opened. Logan Trent was subpoenaed. Leviathan, once a monster in the deep, was dragged into daylight, tangled, bleeding, howling in the open, and Mara's voice echoed across millions of screens. We weren't trying to be famous, we were trying to be free. A year to the day, the cruise ship MV Constellation was sold, stripped, and renamed. A new crew. A new logo, but the bones of Ither-haunted decks, the broken cameras, the hatch that never opened, remained. So did the whispers. Journalists called it the influencer experiment. The dark web called it the ghost circuit, but for Joe Fulton, it would always be the place where her daughters disappeared and remade themselves. On this day, Joe stood alone on a pier in Maine, wind slapping her coat, holding a paper envelope. Inside it was the last piece. Not evidence, not proof, just peace. Small USB drive, wrapped in waxed paper. No note, the return address. Only a black ink stamp, the alchemical symbol for Earth. It had shown up before, hidden in Mara's last voice memo, etched into metadata from the Leviathan AI. The girl's final breadcrumb. Joe plugged the drive into her laptop that night, one file. Ocean_held_us.wava, recording, raw, uncut, a single take, static curling around breath. Then, Mara's voice, older, stronger, still her. "If you're hearing this, we're done running for a year. We were shadows. We watched them rebuild the machine. New names, new faces, but the same cruelty beneath. So we didn't just run. We rewrote the code. We found others, kids like us. Left behind, forgotten, repurposed, and we gave them back their names. A beat." Then Lena, her voice like smoke over fire. Leviathan wasn't just a system, it was a belief. That your voice isn't yours. Your face isn't yours. That everything you are, belongs to them. Mara, again, quieter now, but the ocean kept us. It didn't drown us, it taught us how to float, even in silence. A pause, then laughter, unfiltered, free, we're going. Offline now, for real this time, no more codes. No more messages, no more ghosts. If the world wants to remember us, make sure they remember this. We were never missing. We were hidden on purpose, and we chose to come back. The recording ended. Joe sat in silence, not grieving, not wondering, just breathing. The constellation's wreckage was turned into a digital museum. Visitors could scroll through reconstructed 3D decks, read the case, watch the hearings. It became a warning and a tribute, all in one. On the homepage, one line stood alone. Not all who vanish are lost. 2 months later, Joe received a final letter, handwritten, sent from a coastal town in South Africa. Hi Mom, we saw whales today. Lena cried because they didn't ask for followers. They just breached the surface, screamed into the air, and vanished again. Maybe that's what we are now, surface screamers, not influencers. Just girls with loud hearts and good shoes. We love you, don't wait. Live. Mara and Lenajo tucked the letter into her coat, and this time, she did cry. But it wasn't pain, it was release somewhere. A satellite drifted over the ocean, unmanned, quiet, watching nothing, and below it, in a cove that didn't exist on maps, 2 girls built a bonfire out of old SIM cards and fake IDs. They danced. No. Stream. No. Tags. No audience, just stars, and truth, and the memory of what it cost them to be free.